Hello everybody! I am so excited today to talk about one of my favorite books ever. I don't usually speak superlatively like that unless I really mean it, so this is pretty serious. The book I'm talking about is Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH by Robert C. O'Brien, and I have loved this book since I was 9 or 10 years old. In fact, when I won my first gift card to Barnes & Noble at some school thing when I was in 4th grade, this was one of the 2 books that I chose to spend it on. I had read it once before, a library copy, and I knew that it was something I wanted to own and that I would read again, and I have. In the last however many years it's been, I have reread this so many times I've lost track. This Apple paperback is actually the movie tie-in edition. I didn't know that when I got it. I only picked this one because it was identical to the one that I had gotten out of the library, and at the time I wasn't sure if Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH would be the exact same book. It is the same book though, just retitled to match the movie, which I will talk a little bit about at the end of this video. I have wanted to review this book ever since I started making YouTube videos 4 years ago, but I haven't gotten around to it. I do find it difficult to review something that I'm so familiar with, that I'm so enthusiastic about. It's harder to be objective because obviously I have a strong personal bias in favor of it, and it's hard to structure my review since I've accumulated a lot of different thoughts on it over the years. But I'm going to do the best I can, because I want to do the book justice, and I want anyone watching this who has never read it to want to read it. This book was published in 1971, and it is the story of Mrs. Frisby, a lady mouse and widowed mother of 4, who is facing a crisis. The weather is getting warmer. Before plowing starts, her family must move out of the farmer's field to the safety of their summer home. But her younger son Timothy is still recovering from pneumonia and is too weak to travel. Faced with an impossible decision, Mrs. Frisby tells a new friend of her dilemma. He suggests she ask the wise owl who lives in the woods what she should do. An owl is not exactly a mouse's best friend, but Mrs. Frisby, willing to risk anything for her children, makes the journey. The intimidating owl in turn gives her some strange advice. Go to the rats. But the rats are mysterious and keep to themselves. Will they be willing to help Mrs. Frisby? And what on earth can they do? What unfolds is an amazing, exciting story of bravery and sacrifice, mostly fantasy, but partly science fiction. I'm not sure I've ever seen it classified as science fiction, but I do consider it one of my first literary exposures to the genre, as it concerns genetic testing and speculates on the implications of what a community of genetically enhanced animals might be capable of. It is a kid's book, yes, but I do find it easy to overlook that. The characters, the subject matter, the storyline, the writing style, none of it is childish. And I really appreciate juvenile fiction that does not talk down to its intended audience, but rather challenges its readers with more complex vocabulary and concepts. Not to an overwhelming degree. You do want kids to be able to read the book and to enjoy it. I think this one strikes a nice balance. It's intelligent and entertaining. There were certainly things I didn't understand on my first and second readings. That's actually been one of the pleasures of revisiting it over the years. Each time I've been able to view it and appreciate it from a slightly older perspective. Mrs. Frisby is not a typical choice for the main character of a juvenile fiction book. She is a mother, a responsible, grown-up character wholly concerned with looking after her children and still coping with things in the year after her husband's death. I think her success and popularity as a character defies the common assumption that young readers can only read about and identify with a protagonist their own age. She is a great character. By nature, she's cautious and avoids trouble, but circumstances force her to face her fears again and again. Hitching a ride on a crow's back, visiting the owl, who's someone who would probably try to eat her, asking the strange rats for help, volunteering for a dangerous mission. None of these are things that she would normally, willingly do. but for the sake of her children, she bravely steps out of her comfort zone. And no matter how well I know the story, I still get anxious with Mrs. Frisby at certain moments. As for the Rats of NIMH, I have always found their story fascinating. Though the origins are completely different, the complexity of their society slightly reminds me of that of the rabbits in Watership Down by Richard Adams, which I also loved and reviewed, but didn't read until 4 years ago. Actually, the backstory of the Rats of NIMH might have more in common with another Richard Adams book, The Plague Dogs, but I'm only guessing on that because I haven't read The Plague Dogs or seen the film. Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH is for kids, however, and from what I've heard, The Plague Dogs is not. Since I've read this book so much, I wasn't sure if there was anything new that I'd get out of it this time around, but I did pick up on something. Hang on, this might get a little deep. I noticed that it touches lightly on a theme that I keep picking up. The plight of the displaced individuals who attempt to return to their original state or original habitat, but who are so significantly altered, whether by physical or mental changes or simply by experience, that they cannot go back to the way things were. Attempts to return or to find a new place for themselves often result in tragedy or disaster. This theme struck me when I was watching Little Dorrit recently. It's something I could have talked about last fall when I reviewed the Universal Frankenstein series, or even the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies. It's a theme of George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, or the musical version, My Fair Lady, and I detected it in Daniel Keyes' Flowers for Algernon. Here it's the rats that find themselves in that position, in their altered state, too intelligent, too organized, and with an insatiable hunger for learning and self-sufficiency. They're no longer able to fit in with others of their kind, so they must make a world for themselves. It always struck me what powerful names O'Brien gave the rats. Nicodemus, Brutus, Jenner, Arthur, Justin. Ah, Justin, my very favorite character. Justin is like the captain of the guard for the rats, and he is one of my big fictional crushes. Don't ask me how a rat can be attractive, he just is. O'Brien does describe him through Mrs. Frisby's viewpoint as alert, dark gray in color, and extraordinarily handsome. Well, hello. But it's a personality thing. Justin is kind, clever, funny, strong, loyal, quick-thinking, brave, polite, courteous, all very desirable, appealing qualities. You tend to forget when you're reading that he's not actually human. Now, I should mention that there are 2 sequels to the book that were written after the original author's death by his daughter under the name Jane Leslie Conley. These are titled Raxco and the Rats of NIMH and R.T. Margaret and the Rats of NIMH. I did read both of them many years ago, but I don't remember much. They did not attain the same level of greatness as the original, and I never felt inclined to read them again. I'll also say a couple things about the movie, which I saw once a couple years ago. It's a Don Bluth film released in 1982 as The Secret of NIMH. I'm not sure why they changed the title, or why they changed the main character's name to Mrs. Brisby, with a B. Like all Don Bluth films, it has a colorful, creative design with several memorable images, some of them memorable in a nightmarish sense. This is one of those kind of creepy animated films. It makes some pretty significant changes, especially in the latter part of the story, which I didn't care for, and there's a mystical feel added to it that I found strange, as if the rats have supernatural powers or something. It boasts an impressive cast doing the voice work, including Derek Jacobi as Nicodemus, John Carradine as the Owl, and Don Bluth regular Dom DeLuise as Jeremy. I was pleased with Mrs. Frisby, played by Elizabeth Hartman, in the final performance of her tragically short career. Hartman played the main character Selina opposite Sidney Poitier in A Patch of Blue, a movie you should definitely see if you haven't already, but that's a side note. I was also satisfied with Peter Strauss's voice work as Justin. He was as pleasant and wonderful as I had hoped he would be, but on the whole the movie kind of disappointed me. I know I'm in the minority there, though, as it is a fairly well-loved film. I think it's just one of those things where I'm so close to the original version that to see an adaptation that makes any changes whatsoever is just too much for me. I think that's about all I have to say for this review. I could ramble on some more about everything I love about the book, but I think you got the idea. I heartily recommend it to readers of all ages, and I really hope that you'll drop a line in the comments below to let me know if you are also a fan of this book. I hope you enjoyed this review, and stay tuned. It looks like we've got a very busy month ahead of us. Thanks for watching!